So it's no secret that here at DK we're quite big fans of the F50, and all F50s are of course very special, but some F50s are arguably more special than the others. Now if you open up the front of an F50, there's a plaque on there and it gives you the number out of 349 that each car is. However, there are just 19 cars that don't form part of that main series and are mainly known as the pre-production cars. Now these cars include of course the test mules and the show cars and obviously the operational prototypes. But there are some cars in there that are the pre-production cars, and this car here is one of those pre-production F50s. As a result, it was sold along with a batch of 6 cars to go to Brunei when it was new, but unlike a number of those 6 cars, it wasn't converted to right-hand drive and remains left-hand drive. And so I'm going to introduce Jordan from Historic Parts here at DK, who's been working on sourcing F50 parts for a restoration we're currently doing, and Jordan will talk us through some of the differences on this pre-production car to those cars from the main production run. So we'll start at the front. Immediately you see the weave on this car from the very, very thin paint is incredibly obvious. And then in the front, the other very obvious thing is, unlike the production cars, it doesn't have that area for the luggage. But Jordan, you can tell us a little bit more.
So apart from the obvious green tint of the weave across the whole of this car, there are some key differences in the front of this F50. The fans that are gold are normally black. The compartments that you use to store your tools and your wheel socket are different shape, different weave compared to factory. This bag which holds the wheel socket is completely different to the factory cars.
On the normal production cars, these carbon parts have a red Ferrari label, which is the production code from when these parts were made in production. But obviously on these early cars, these weren't made in the production line, they were made almost by hand as part of that pre-production process. Is there anything else in here, Jordan?
Yeah, as you move to sort of the middle of the car, this front windscreen panel, this is finished in a satin coat, whereas it should be a gloss coat as to the other production cars. Moving up to the top of the windscreen, there's 2 mounting holes for the roof, where on all of the other cars there's normally only 1. Both of the wing mirrors don't have their Morelli plaques to finish them off. Neither does the interior rear view mirror, which is also made by Morelli. As you come into the interior of the car, straight away you'll notice that on the passenger side there's no chassis number plaque. The most obvious thing inside the car is the seats also have this additional red side bolster where the factory cars do not. The tint and the shade of the dash and the door panels and the sill panels is also slightly different. Moving on to sort of the dashboard area, the dash binnacle has got a red stitching instead of a black, so the indicator stalks also don't have their factory stamping. The roof bag doesn't actually come with this car. It's also missing the speed warning sticker that goes on the back of this bulkhead. As we move over to the rear clam of the car, the perspex is held in with a nut and bolt combination, and there's also louvres on the actual perspex itself.
So this is probably the most obvious thing on this car, because these smaller details, the difference in the weave of the carbon fibre, you don't initially see, but when you first walk up to the car you see these bolts and suddenly it piques your interest, and then you look further in, you see these louvres come underneath, and they don't do that on the production cars, do they?
No, it was only the first production car, 001, that actually has these louvres from the factory.
And everything else has moulded into the panel?
Yes, yeah. As we come to the rear of the car, all of the carbon components are very similar to the interior, where they have a greenish tint, slightly different weave, very, very shallow lacquer coating. There's no carbon fibre body stickers on the rear of this car at all. So the exhaust on this car is completely different, as the ANSA Ferrari branded plaques are not present on this car. It's a handwritten production plaque. The rear lamp covers are also tinted with that green lacquer. There's no stickers on the airbox, there's no stickers on the fuse box, there's no finishing stickers on the heat exchanger. So the Bilstein dampers don't have any branding on them, and also the bump stops are also different. And if you come around here on the wishbone push rod, there's a stamping here that says May of 1995, which is not present on any other car. So although you can't see it, the handbrake calipers are actually painted gold instead of black and are missing their Ferrari logo. Unlike the physical differences of this car, the car also has one mechanical difference, which is when you turn the ignition key to on, it automatically raises the front lift of the car.
Thank you, Jordan. As I said at the beginning, whilst all F50s are special, when you get into the realms of these cars, where they're all now coming into the collector's grade area of Ferraris, it's so nice to have something about this car that makes it a bit more special and a little bit more extra than those other cars. And along with the other 5 Brunei F50s, this car was delivered to Asia for the Brunei royal family. And then since then it's resided in a museum in Australia, and in a very significant collection in America. And more recently, the car was owned by a real Ferrari enthusiast who actually owns a very big group of main dealerships, and he had this as his own personal F50. So I think that makes it one of the most interesting F50s in terms of that quite interesting extra little details around the car. And actually, we found these, or you found these 30 odd differences from a quick walk around. I'm sure the more time you spend with this car, you'll probably come up with even more differences between this and the standard production cars. To date, the car's only covered 1,900 kilometers from new, so not only does it have those extra features, it also happens to be surely one of the lowest mileage F50s that could ever be on the market at any one time. You can immediately see from looking at the car that it's never had any paint. The weave on this car is unbelievable. And of course, it's fully serviced and up to date, and I think a really interesting opportunity for a real Ferrari enthusiast.